In early 1996, Sharon Stone won the Golden Globe Award for Best Actress in a Motion Picture Drama, and then she got her first Oscar nomination for Best Actress for Martin Scorsese's Casino. At this time, Sharon Stone was on top of the world. She had just given her career best performance in Scorsese's movie, also starring Joe Pesci and Robert De Niro and James Woods. Her 1992 erotic thriller Basic Instinct made more than $350 million at the worldwide box office, and she was now one of the giant female movie stars of the 1990s. Not everything she was making was hitting with audiences, but even her lesser films of that time, like Sliver, were doing pretty well. And when she got that big win at the Globes for Casino, followed by the Oscar nomination, it seemed like Sharon Stone had really made a mark for herself in the entertainment industry. I mean, I grew up in the 1990s, and when I looked to my female film stars, she was right there at the top with Julia Roberts and Meg Ryan and Sandra Bullock and Demi Moore and Jodie Foster, like a very tight group of women who could open films, who could do well with both audiences and critics, and whose face was splashed over every magazine imaginable. But something Sharon Stone does not share with all of those other women I mentioned was how she was not in any way, shape, or form an overnight success story. I mean, Julia Roberts made 2 or 3 films before she became a superstar. Demi Moore, pretty quickly after her film debut, was a member of the Brat Pack. She was going strong. Jodie Foster's career was flourishing from a young age. Meg Ryan hit it big pretty quickly after she started appearing in movies. Sandra Bullock took a few years. Her film debut was in 1987, and then she didn't hit it big until Speed in 1994. So it took Sandra Bullock about 7 years until she broke through as a major movie star, but I bet Sharon Stone would have wished it only took 7 years. Her film debut is in 1980, and then she does not make it big until 1992's Basic Instinct. It took Sharon Stone 12 years to finally become a star.
You made 17 films before Basic Instinct, before a really successful one. Everybody thinks you're the overnight star.
Yeah, after 15 years.
Why did it take so long? What films did she make throughout the 80s that were not pushing her career forward? What were these duds? Where were those moments where she could have broken out as a star, but it didn't happen? And what was the main number one reason why Sharon Stone hit it big? Hey guys, it's Brian. Welcome to the Awards Contender, and this is the story of Sharon Stone's long and winding road to stardom. Let's begin with part 1, the early 1980s. So after winning the title of Miss Crawford County, Pennsylvania, Sharon Stone became a model. She was a fashion model in New York City. She moved to Europe for a couple years and modeled there, but then she got the acting bug and decided, if not now, when, she moved back to New York City and started auditioning for films. It all started with Woody Allen's 1980 comedy Stardust Memories, which opens with Sharon Stone blowing him a kiss on a train. She doesn't have any lines, but she's obviously very striking in black and white at the beginning of the film, and she leaves an impression which probably should have led to better work in the years to come, but all she really got after Stardust Memories was Wes Craven's cheesy, but kind of entertaining 1981 religious horror film Deadly Blessing, where she has a famous run-in with a spider. She gets the chance to act in that film. She's a little stiff in Deadly Blessing. She does what the role requires her to do. Like, she's fine. It's not the kind of performance where you're like, oh my god, she is about to be a huge star. Like, you don't feel that in Deadly Blessing, but she's so beautiful. She has a presence about her. It seemed like with the right material, the right director, in the next couple years, maybe she could break into the big time. And the thing with Sharon Stone, even at this early point of her career, she's very prolific. She's working all the time. Sometimes it's in television and guest star roles. Sometimes it's in commercials. She is in a ton of commercials in the early 1980s, so she's getting her face out there, but the film roles are kind of few and far between. She's not getting offered like anything that interesting yet. She's probably auditioning, right, for everything she appears in this early point of her career. But finally in 1984, she gets a role in a film that could have been her breakthrough. Like, on paper, it seems like this could have pushed her career in the right direction. The 1984 comedy drama romance Irreconcilable Differences, starring Ryan O'Neal, Shelley Long, and Drew Barrymore. This film was like a big ticket Hollywood movie of '84, and Sharon Stone plays a supporting role in that as a young woman named Blake who becomes an actress. And she has a moment in that film where she is singing and dancing with like a giant crane shot where she gets to show her stuff, not just as a pretty face, but as a very adept comedian and dramatic actress, a singer. It's definitely her richest role to date, and if the film had been a bigger hit at the box office, if it had done better with critics, maybe something could have happened for Stone around 84, 85, but sadly, the movie only made about $12 million on a $10 million budget, so Stone unfortunately couldn't capitalize on that film. She couldn't become a big female movie star of the 80s, right? She couldn't become Meg Ryan, who's appearing in Top Gun and Inner Space. She couldn't become Demi Moore, who's in St. Elmo's Fire and About Last Night. She couldn't have that kind of career yet, at least in the 1980s, and so she had to continue settling for roles in films that were likely not her first choice, right? So in 1985, she's in King Solomon's Mines, an action-adventure film that really didn't go anywhere, and then the following year, she's in Alan Quatermain and the Lost City of Gold, which earns Sharon Stone her first Razzie Award nomination. So after 6 years in the movies, like, nothing's really happening with her career. She's appearing in stuff, some like lead roles in big movies by this point, by like 86, but nothing is really coming on strong. She can't find that role, that film, to really propel her forward. Let's move into part 2, the late 1980s. Was there anything in that era that was bringing Sharon Stone closer to superstardom? Sadly, not really. Like, she's very prolific. She continues to be in a bunch of films, television projects. She's in 2 movies in 87, 2 movies in 88, 2 movies in 89. And some of these are pretty big films. Some of them are even hits. And she has pretty substantial roles in many of these. She can't really stand out in the cast. Mainly because the screenplays don't give her enough to do. Like in 1987, she's in Police Academy 4 as basically the love interest, right? To Steve Guttenberg and that. You know, that was a hit at the box office. They made more sequels in that franchise. But that's not the kind of role for Sharon Stone that's going to catapult her career. 1988, she's in 2 big action films. The first one, Above the Law, starring Steven Seagal, that was a breakout hit for Seagal. I talked about it in my Steven Seagal video a few weeks ago. And unfortunately, Sharon Stone gets almost nothing to do in that movie. She's just like the wife, she's at home, she has a few scenes that don't amount to anything. Pam Grier gets the much better female role in that movie. So even though Above the Law makes Steven Seagal a star right off the get-go, one film, right? Before 88, pretty much nobody knows who he is. Sharon Stone has been acting in films for 8 years at this point. Seagal makes one movie, he's a star, and Stone gets basically nothing out of that one. Same thing with Action Jackson, which didn't do as well as Above the Law. That was the action movie that tried to make like a big star out of Carl Weathers, like an action movie star, leading man. Didn't really work out. And again, Sharon Stone gets kind of a thankless wife role in that. She doesn't get a whole lot to do. So by the time we're getting to the end of the 80s, it's like, man, who is going to give Sharon Stone a break? Both of her films released in 89 go nowhere. She's still working all the time in movies, in television. She's in a big TV miniseries around that time called War and Remembrance, which got her some good notices. But it is wild to think like how big of a film star she became in the 90s, how she worked all the time throughout the entire decade of the 1980s and could never catch a frickin' break. She said in interviews in the early 90s that something she struggled with throughout the 80s was that she was never looked at as sexy, as beautiful. She came off like too bookish, too nerdy, and like shy. That was kind of her natural personality, and it was hard for her to come across as the sexy, vibrant leading lady. But all of that changed when a certain someone came into her professional life, director Paul Verhoeven.
this is the man I've been waiting for. And I was so relieved that suddenly this gift had been given to me, that there was a person that was there and really willing to help and guide me as an actor.
That takes us to part 3, the early 1990s. This is when everything finally happens for Sharon Stone. How did she become a star? We all know that her breakthrough was in 1992's Basic Instinct. That's the film that made her super big, made her an actress who could draw in audiences. Like the next year, 1993's Sliver is not a good movie. I actually just watched it a few weeks ago. It was on the Criterion Channel, of all places. I had never seen it. And it's really bad. Like, the ending is an absolute travesty, but Sliver still did very well at the box office. Like, people showed up based on her performance in Basic Instinct, and audiences falling in love with Sharon Stone, wanting to follow her anywhere she went. How did this quote-unquote overnight success finally happen for Sharon Stone? It was 1990's Total Recall, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger and directed by Paul Verhoeven, who was coming off of a big action movie hit, RoboCop from 1987. After a decade in the movies, Sharon Stone still had to audition for Total Recall. That was not an offer, you know? It's not like they saw her in Above the Law or Action Jackson and said, yeah, let's get Stone for this really good female role in Total Recall. No, she had to go in there, audition again. Like, it wasn't easy for her to get that part. Thankfully, she got the role of Lori, Arnold Schwarzenegger's character's wife, in Total Recall, and this was her best part to date. She gets to be funny, dramatic, real. She gets to be physical in that movie, gets to fight Arnold Schwarzenegger, who by 1990 was one of the biggest movie stars in the world. So Sharon Stone holding her own up against Schwarzenegger, kicking his ass. You know, she was very memorable in that movie, and Total Recall was one of the big hits of 1990. That film did extraordinarily well. So after 10 years of so many flops, so many near misses and things, like her career just not really going anywhere, Total Recall pushed her in the right direction. 1991, she's in like 5 films. None of them are big hits. Some of them are comedy, some of them are action. She's working all the time and trying different things. Nothing really clicks in 1991. None of her movies really break out. But at some point around this time, Basic Instinct is getting ready to shoot. It's Paul Verhoeven's next film following Total Recall. Michael Douglas has signed on to play the lead male role. And now it's like, okay, well, who's going to play the sexy, devious Catherine Trammell? You might assume Paul Verhoeven was thinking about Sharon Stone after working with her on Total Recall and thought, yeah, let's get Stone for this. That was not the case. Sharon Stone was only cast in Basic Instinct after multiple major female movie stars turned the role down, including Kim Basinger, Meg Ryan, Demi Moore, Julia Roberts, Geena Davis. The list goes on and on. It's like 20 names. And the main reason all of these great actresses turned Basic Instinct down was the nudity. The nudity required for this role, it really turned off a lot of these actresses. They didn't want to have to do that. And so after all of these no's come in, and Paul Verhoeven and company are just like frantic, like trying to find the right person for this character, then Verhoeven goes to Sharon Stone. When he's like used up all of his offers and tried all sorts of different women for this part, he says, what about Sharon Stone, who I just worked with on Total Recall? Maybe she could be great for this. And reportedly, Michael Douglas wanted nothing to do with Sharon Stone in Basic Instinct. He wanted a bigger star in that part. He didn't want to be the only big celebrity in that film. He said, I need someone to share the risks of this movie. I don't want to be up there all by myself. There's going to be a lot of shit flying around. Like, he didn't even want to test with her. He refused to test with Sharon Stone for a while. But after like all of the major stars of that era turned the role down, he finally did test with Stone, and they recognized there was something there. Stone eventually got the part. She was paid $500,000 for Basic Instinct. Michael Douglas was paid $14 million. Verhoeven had enjoyed a very good working relationship with Sharon Stone on Total Recall, and apparently the moment she transitioned from evil to love in those few seconds before her character died in Total Recall was the moment Verhoeven remembered in that film where he said, okay, I think Sharon Stone can play Catherine Trammell in Basic Instinct. He was right. She, of course, hits that role out of the park. She is dynamite in Basic Instinct. And when that movie hit theaters in March of 1992, finally, after 12 years, Sharon Stone became a superstar.
No, you became an overnight success after a mere 12 years and some 25 films with Basic Instinct. What difference did that immediately make to your life?
The life I had before was over.
She got a Golden Globe nomination for Basic Instinct in Best Actress in a Motion Picture Drama, and then she is off and running as a major motion picture leading lady in Sliver, and Intersection, and The Specialist, and The Quick and the Dead, and of course, Martin Scorsese's Casino, which wins her the Golden Globe and earns her an Oscar nomination for Best Actress. Again, after Basic Instinct, Sharon Stone is everywhere. She is a giant megastar in the movies, and growing up myself in the 90s as a kid, going to films and being interested, like at age 9, age 10, in adult material, you know? Like, I wasn't allowed to see Basic Instinct when it came out, when it hit video stores, but very soon as I entered my teen years, I started to watch Sharon Stone's work around that time, discovered Casino, and her extraordinary performance in that. Casino, more than any other film, even more than Basic Instinct, I'd say, really proves her talent, her worth, how exceptional she is as a dramatic actress, and I just always assumed Sharon Stone had come on strong as a big movie star, maybe had been in a couple films, a couple TV things, and then hit it big with Basic Instinct. But no, it took 12 years for that to happen, and another 3 years for her to get in at the Oscars. And ever since the mid-1990s, Sharon Stone has been around. Her career has had, ebbs and flows. She never had a giant hit, like as a leading lady again. Like, she's in Basic Instinct 2, and that was not as well received at the box office from critics as Basic Instinct 1, but she continued to work. She still pops up in a bunch of things, television and film to this day. The name Sharon Stone, always a part of our cinema lexicon. But boy, did she have to pay her dues. Did she have to appear in movie after movie for years, for more than a decade, like over 20 films, before she finally broke through. Some actresses of that era had it much easier, like Julia Roberts, who was in Pretty Woman basically after she started acting. Demi Moore had happened pretty fast. Michelle Pfeiffer came on strong right from the beginning. And what about Meryl Streep, right? Her first movie is Julia, starring Jane Fonda, and then 2 years later, she's in Kramer vs. Kramer, winning an Oscar. Not every talented, beautiful actress in Hollywood gets to have that overnight success. Sometimes they are working really hard behind the scenes for years, for more than a decade, to break through. What a long and winding road Sharon Stone had to take to stardom.